The Vibecession is a complete joke. If you don't know what I'm referring to, let's refer to all of the consumer sentiment surveys that are at or near record lows. We're going to talk about what the data really shows. And to highlight the Vibecession's complete nonsense, we're going to talk about 5 real things in the economy. And you know what? We will start with jobs. Jobs. What is going on? Well, first and foremost, the unemployment rate is at 4.6%. It is higher than any Federal Reserve member thought. It is the highest it's been, I think, in 3 years or so. But if you step back and you zoom out, a 4.6% unemployment rate is not high. In fact, when I was going to school, it was often believed that 6% was full employment. That was since reduced to 5%. So again, we are at full employment. And oh, by the way, weekly unemployment claims has not broken. In fact, we just got weekly unemployment claims this morning, a day early because of Christmas. Merry Christmas. They came in at 214,000. Once again, keeping that trend line of 220 intact and actually below 10,000 below last week. So the job market, if you zoom in, looks to be a problem. The 4.6% unemployment is 0.5% higher than 4.1, where it was at 6 or 7 months ago. But if you zoom out just a little bit, we are sitting at full employment. What about GDP? Perhaps the best indicator of what is going on in our economy. It's government, it's business, and consumer spending. If you don't recall, Q3 GDP was just ratcheted up to 4.3%. Folks, that's not a recession. That's the economy, frankly, cranking. Now, some of that obviously has to do with how we trade or how the trade deficit acts, and we've talked about that. You import less, GDP goes up because imports are a negative to GDP. But again, it is hard to look at a 4.3% GDP growth and again, think recession. How about holiday spending? Perhaps the largest indicator of what consumers are actually doing today. This isn't last quarter. This is right now. And holiday spending has been off the charts. In fact, it is said that holiday spending will be $1 trillion for the first time ever this holiday season. How about rates? Well, we've obviously initiated a rate cutting cycle. We have mortgage rates sitting in and around 6.2%. We are down almost a full point, call it 0.75 of a point from last year. And we are below the historical trend of 7.1. And then finally, inflation. Inflation came in at a surprising 2.6 for core, 2.7 headline, and all people could do is bitch about the number being manipulated. Well, folks, if you want to bitch about the number being manipulated, how about the fact that rent is still showing at 3.6% when it's freaking negative? That is sheer madness. So again, I think the Vibecession is just a bunch of grumpy people picking up the phone, taking surveys. It does not feel that any of these metrics are negative. In fact, many are solid. If you were looking at these 5 things, jobs, GDP, holiday spending, rates, inflation, you got to give it a B+, A-, right? This is not an F. This is not a recession. So again, it's becoming obvious to me that consumer sentiment surveys are complete trash and garbage. It doesn't match what's going on in the real world. So anyways, other things we read in the last while, we got Hassett talking about the Fed being way behind the curve on rates. Never forget that Hassett is running for the big job Fed president. President Trump has come out and said anybody that he nominates must cut rates. I've got to tell you, be careful what you wish for. This is a real... how should I say this? This is a real warning. If we get a puppet for the Fed chair, the bond market could revolt. Even if the Fed chair wins and they cut 100 basis points, there is no guarantee that the long end doesn't race up 100 points. Be careful what you wish for. Fed President Moran's basically pointing the finger at the Fed presidents. Check it out. He says people not updating their views to reflects poorly on the institution. Basically, what Moran is saying is all of you bears and hawks and all of that, you're not looking at the real data on the street. You're just stuck in your ways, and you're going to hurt the economy. It looks like consumers ratcheted up $1,223 in debt this season. And as I just mentioned, this will be the first holiday season that we spend over $1 trillion. That's with a T. That's not with a B. That's a T. That is crazy. Gas prices are currently sitting at a 4-year low, although you couldn't tell in California, but hey, that's Gavin Newsom's problem. Gas prices at a 4-year low. Let's talk about our amazing school community, which again, you can still join and get access to the live stream of our Vegas event. So don't miss out. These are the four topics that I found this morning. Anyone using Turbo Tenant for accounting, is it worth the $8? Thought that was interesting. I've never used it, but others have. We obviously had another new member introduction. People asking for insurance company recommendation. Obviously, Steadily Insurance is somebody that the channel supports, but there are others out in the community. And should you get laundry machines, CoinOps, or use one of those services? Again, I thought that was some interesting discussions. Got some talk from the CEO of Tanger Outlets. If you don't know who that is, they are the largest operator of outlet malls in the country. They are saying that consumer spending continued during the holiday season. Dare I say so, $1 trillion. Holiday promotions help sustain traffic and sales, and the consumer appears resilient. Again, this is back to the Vibecession being a complete joke. You might be a grumpy Gus, but you're still taking out your credit card and spending money. Crazy. Lennar reporting that the average home price they're selling is down 21%. That is a crash, folks. In my book, anything over 20 is a crash. Lennar home prices are crashing. Now, that is not in a single year. That is from the pandemic peak. But nonetheless, they are taking it on the chin and eating margin. I saw an interesting report out of Britain. This is focused on Britain or the UK. Says that it would take 52 years for somebody in middle class to save and climb their way to being wealthy in the top 10%. Folks, at the end of the day, hopefully you know by now, saving your way to wealth is the slow and very uncertain way. You've got to invest. You got to own assets. Inflation's a feature, not a bug. Cash flow day one, no alligators. You know what we talk about here. Consumer confidence hits a record low. And this is what really led me on to the research of the Vibecession. Hit 89.1, down for the 5th straight month. Again, 5 months in a row, consumer sentiment or confidence falling. However, GDP is up. The job market's not breaking. Inflation is down. Holiday seasons is gangbusters. Pretty interesting. Again, we are seeing a historical government report become completely useless right in front of our eyes. Don't know if you guys know this or remember this, but Warren Buffett is stepping down as the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway on December 31st. So I went out and got some quotes, thought-provoking quotes from the good old Warren Buffett. Thought we could run through real quick. This is the first one I think I ever heard from Warren Buffett 30 years ago. The first rule in investment is don't lose money. And the second rule is don't forget the first rule. Very much a Warren Buffett quote. Now, next one, focus on what is important and knowable. If you don't know anything about Warren Buffett, he reads and reads and reads. He's always digging in. Ignore the chatter. Keep costs minimal. Folks, don't inflate your means as your wages grow. Use that to create discretionary income, and you can become wealthy. You don't want to be sleepwalking through life. This is a big one, folks. Life is happening. Life is happening. Understand that you have choices, options. Don't sleepwalk your way through life. Avoid credit cards. Just forget about them. This is the last one we'll go through. The most important thing is finding the right spouse. Folks, at the end of the day, your spouse, your significant other, whoever you choose to spend the most time with, your person will make or break you. It is just that simple. As we wrap up the daily financial news, we got a couple more things. We got Fed pause now up to 86%. Yes, looks like a January pause is coming. 86%. Want you to remind you, folks, we haven't sold any tickets to our Vegas event in a week. That is greatly disappointing. Most of that's my fault. I don't advertise. I don't do anything except talk about it here. But talk to your CPA. These likely are tax deductible. Both the tickets, flights, all of that. Talk to your accountant. See when you want the taxes written off this year or next year. Get your tickets, flights, hotels, all of that. Vegas is on sale. We have less than 90 tickets, and I think we still have 3 teenage seats. So if you have a teenager in your life, reach out to me, let me know, and we will match their ticket with yours, as I want to see teenagers in the room. As I mentioned earlier, weekly unemployment claims fell again, this time to 214,000. Weekly mortgage applications actually down 5% week on week, but that's no shock there. It is a holiday week. You would expect it to be down week on week. I do want to let you know 2 more things. First, the dollar weakness. The dollar is having its worst year since 2003. That's 22 years ago, folks. And then finally, I actually think the unemployment rate is going to continue to go up. I think the Fed has missed it. What happened? Well, if you zoom out to the last 3 or 4 years, we saw the participation rate fall or collapse. In fact, you heard Dan Bird and I think about a year ago, talk about why the unemployment rate was artificially low, because the participation rate keeps falling. About 3 months ago, right when the unemployment rate started going up, we saw a pivot, a shift. Participation rate is going up. And if the participation rate goes back to trend, we could have 4.8 or even 5% unemployment. I think the Fed is asleep at the wheel. I think the Fed is wrong. I think the Fed is misguided. But hey, it is what it is. Folks, that is the daily financial news for Christmas Eve. Yes, we still do the financial news live on Christmas Eve. Hopefully you appreciate that. Please get your tickets to our event. You can get them on Eventbrite. I will put a link in after the show posts. And of course, don't forget our sponsor for the daily financial news. It is Steadily Landlord Insurance. Anytime you get a renewal or a cancellation or buy a new property, it's your job as a landlord to see who can give you the best coverage at the best rates. Sometimes it's them, sometimes it's not, and that's okay. Folks, have a great day. Don't forget, join school. The link is right there on the screen. Later. And yes, we will do the daily financial news on Christmas Day. I don't miss a day. Hopefully you know that. All right, take care. We'll see you tomorrow. Later.